One Piece live action season 2 review. Your friendly neighborhood communist pirate has come around, and I binged the entire thing in a single sitting. So if that's enough to tell you if you should go watch it, go watch it. Yeah, go and watch it. It was very, very enjoyable. I really did like a lot of it. I really enjoyed a lot of it. I know it sounded like I said didn't there, but no, I did like a lot of it. I got an entire list to go through here, and it's kind of all over the place, but spoiler warnings for both the manga, the anime, and also the live action now as well. And really kind of like anything related to One Piece. So there's your warning for the captain to get into his rambling about this, because you know me, I'm a giant One Piece fan if that wasn't clear enough right there. But yes. Let's get into it, shall we? Pros and cons. There's a lot of pros. First, let's start off kind of a bit of a random one. I really liked how the show kind of shows us a lot of these characters like getting their devil fruits for the first time, such as with Walpole getting his devil fruit, and, you know, having it be kind of like a gift from Crocodile to him to kind of take back the kingdom and all this other stuff, to kind of have him in his pocket. I kind of like that. It also kind of makes everyone that is in this first stretch of the Grand Line and the Paradise, you know, the Baroque Works saga, or the Alabasta saga, as it's called, kind of feel much more like has a complete through line as opposed to with like the manga, because I mean obviously that through line was there, the Straw Hats and Vivi and all this other stuff, but now it kind of feels a lot more clean and cut through. So it kind of feels like each one is like a representation of them all, right? Really enjoy that. I loved the VFX. The VFX looked great, right? And like last season, the CGI and like visual effects and, you know, like prosthetics and makeup and all this other stuff accomplished what it wanted to within the season and everything, right? But it definitely seems like they were trying to like iron out some of the kinks here and there, despite the fact of how long it was like kind of in production and, you know, being planned, but then only started filming a little bit. And I think it even started filming at the tail end of the pandemic and other things along those lines. So, you know, it was a little rough, but this time around a lot of the VFX actually look amazing. You know, Chopper CGI, a lot of people thought that he wasn't going to look good and that he'd look very fake, and oh, maybe they should have used a Muppet and or like a puppet and all this other stuff, but I actually think Chopper looked fucking fantastic in the live action. I love how cute he is. I love the way that he emotes and like the detail on him, and every time he's in a scene he looks natural in the scene, especially like when interacting with a lot of the sort of other actors around, even though he's not physically there. I wonder if they kind of like made like a life size. I know Hot Toys put out that 18-inch like Chopper figure for the live action. I wonder if like maybe they had something like that, or maybe just that figure there, but who knows if it was even in production at that time, to kind of like help actors and other things along those lines, kind of like what they do with a lot of like big CGI characters. I know the MCU does it, like, we know, with like the Hulk bust and mannequin and the Thanos mannequin and other things along those lines. The other thing I really enjoyed about the show, like overall from like a production standpoint, is there was no two-screen policy sort of thing, right? And that was kind of amongst the myriad of other issues that Stranger Things Season 5 had, that one of the big things, especially with Netflix and Netflix original things, is their like two-screen policy, is that people will be watching in the background and you want to keep telling them what's going on to keep them interested in other things like that, so they have to constantly reiterate things that's going on. That's been something that has been kind of hounded on, and, you know, fairly so, but also like been revealed by a lot of people, producers and writers who have worked for Netflix and probably don't anymore because of them laying like the cat out of the bag with that. The pirate from the brig, or you can say, of having to keep in mind that people are going to be watching this in the background, but they didn't really have that. Not a lot of like, you know, constant reiteration of all this stuff, and kind of have to constantly keep people informed, despite the fact that the whole point of such long episodes is to kind of fit a lot in there and do a lot with them and all this other stuff. So, and also world build and all these other things, and a two-screen policy would not help that at all. It would actually make the experience far, far worse. Which I don't know who to thank, if I need to thank like Oda for that, of like putting his foot down as like executive producer and other things like that, because of like the actual power he says when it comes to this show being made, or one of the other showrunners that, you know, does a lot of interviews and a lot of things to constantly, you know, put their foot down and be like, no, we're not doing that. This is how it has to happen. I love the cameos that we see. We see Bartolomeo. I thought it was just going to be like a background thing, but no, he's like actually there for a bit and like actually interacting, and that kind of like leads into Bart of like what his arc will be later on in like Dressrosa, if they get to Dressrosa. That's I really, really do enjoy that a lot. And then obviously like Sabo and Dragon, and then you get to see some cameos in the background of other characters as well that will make an appearance later on. I have it here later on the list, but like you can see in the background some of the wanted posters for some future characters that will be showing up next season, but also later on after that. There's also everything like with Brook and the Rumbar Pirates and Calico and Laboon and all this other stuff. I loved that. I loved seeing it. I thought that was awesome, the way that they did it. They didn't really... I don't even think they even mentioned Brook by name, but he's just kind of like there, and I love it. Love the actor for him. That's great. I think that the way that this is going to be keep going, seeing a lot of these characters that will show up later on, showing up either sooner as background and other things along those lines, I really, really enjoy. And it also like the conversations that are happening that are, and like words and like labels, terms, and other things like that that are being thrown around now to kind of like set in plot hooks that also like then leads people to the manga / anime, but also keeps people hooked for what it might mean in the live action. I think is really, really good. You know, the mention of Nika, the mention of God Valley, the mention of Hero of the Marines, and all this other stuff I really, really like. Fight scenes are fucking awesome. I love them. I love the way that they work. I love the way that they do things. The choreography is insane. McKinyu and his swordsmanship, sword skill, and all this other stuff on full display. I adored it. I thought it was so cool. I love the way that we see, you know, the use of powers and, you know, the Logia from Smoker and Logtown, and even some of the more like goofy bits with like the slip fruit and Alvida, I actually thought was really, really well done, even if it was kind of played up for laughs and did look a little awkward. I still did enjoy it. All the stuff with Sanji and seeing the physicality of Taz Skylar, who plays him, and yes, I know all the issues with Taz Skylar, you know, free Palestine, right? But everything going on with him, you know, physically as an actor and what he brought to the table, I absolutely enjoyed. And I love the way that we get to see all like the physicality of these actors and the fight scenes, and the more and more like supernatural it gets over time, which I'll point out a lot later as we keep going. Specifically, another standout moment for the VFX is Smoker and the Logia. I love the way that that was executed. I love the way that it looked, and it really shows off the powers of a Logia very well, instead of just having him turn into smoke and then like reappear to kind of like, you know, have that illusion there that he's becoming intangible. A lot of times you actually do see like it go through and then like come out, or like the moment where they're in the spy network kind of listening outpost, right? And he gets his like head cut off or head split in half, and like then it reforms. I thought that was really cool. You know, also the arms and the white bellow, and also the bellow bike. That also looks really cool. I love the fact that they kept the cigars. I love that. And it never actually seems goofy. It always Constant kind of looks very badass to me, the way that he has those two thick-ass fucking cigars in his mouth. Love the way that looks. And I I love the set design. The set design looks great. I love all the, like, the little details, like I've mentioned, but also kind of like the technology you see, the kind of set pieces and all this other stuff, kind of making the places feel lived in, feel a part of the world, and actually make sense. You know, the books and the castle in Drum Island, you know, all the different, like, looks that all the places have, and then like the marine bases, the marine offices, and then you have, like, the technology in the background with, you know, transponder snails, and then that moment with Usopp talking and leaving a message for Kaya back in Seart Village, and like this like phone booth with a Den Mushi, and also like the like lack of horses, so everyone kind of like has these like pedal bike machines, but then there's also seemingly electricity, but then also it's mostly like lanterns and light and other things. Like it's pretty interesting and cool to see. Maybe it's just all gas powered, who knows. That's some pretty expert machining, you know, having this glass band around that statue in Logtown light up and like flicker on. It looks like electricity, but who knows. And also, if the like Discord minigame, which I completed twice and got all gold figures twice on that, I 100% that entire thing because I am the One Piece man. You know, there are light bulbs on that machine, so maybe there's some stuff about that. You know, it's never really explained where electricity comes from in One Piece. It probably either comes from fucking, you know, windmills or some form of like turbines or other things along those lines, or maybe they have, you know, special pumps, or maybe they use like electric eels or whatever, who knows. The dialogue isn't atrocious. I actually really like the way that a lot of the dialogue is written. It feels very natural a lot of the times, but it also comes off as very like melodramatic as well, but I love it for that. It lends this like seriousness and this heaviness and this weight to it, right? And again, no MCU like, oh, that happened, oh, you didn't say that, all this other stuff, like whenever Luffy declares he's going to be king of the pirates and all this other, you know, the serious scenes and serious dialogue I really enjoy. And there are some gags within there, but it always feels like in character, kind of like Usopp yelling at Zoro to go do something, make himself useful, all this other stuff, and then Zoro's like, you could just ask nicely, and then like walks off. But also that shows great chemistry between the two. Let's see, the stunt work is also great. I love it. Even if you can clearly tell that it's wire work, it gives it a certain charm to it. I really, really enjoyed seeing the characters go flying, the actors go flying, spinning, all this other stuff twirling around. I think that's really, really cool. I also like the unique editing, you know, the bounty posters, the Baroque work, you know, cards, all this other stuff. I also found the moment where Vivi, or, well, Ms. Wednesday and Mr. Nine are together in the under of, like, the Mary, and they show their cards, and you see these hands take them, and then the next cut is McKinyu, and I think it was, either Taz or Emily, like, crumpling up the paper and tossing it away. I think that's such a cool little thing, which then makes you wonder, like, did they just take those off of them and crumple and throw them away, or like what did they do, or is it just like a little bit of nice, cool, stylistic editing? Either way, I love. It kind of almost reminds me of like a really well executed like Ang Lee 2000s Hulk with like kind of mimicking manga frames and the cut-ins and all this other stuff. I really, really enjoyed it. Also, Emily Rudd is so hot. Oh my god! Whoa! If you know the scene, you know the scene. God damn! Fuck anyone out there who is like making edits to make her tits bigger. Like, sure, it looks hot, but I don't care. She is so fine as is. She's so pretty. She like worked her ass off to get in shape, clearly, and all this other stuff. Like, I wouldn't be like surprised if they did the thing of like giving her some sort of like prosthetics later on, because that is something that happens with Nami's, that her chest does get bigger. But that's kind of like one of those things where it's like, well, that's the manga. The manga is cartoony. The manga is, you know, the demographic of boys, even though it's almost a complete split 50-50 of who gets who, and and the like within the manga, and also, like, everyone's hot in the fucking manga, so there is that, and it would feel very weird to to have it. But if someone like Emily Rudd does choose to go about that specifically for this role, and get cosmetic surgery, which would be crazy, but, I mean, Alvida's actress lost a fuck ton of weight, because that was not, like, prosthetics, whenever she was playing Alvida in her, like, heavier form, in the first season. Like, she went and lost a fuck ton of weight for this season to kind of, like, mimic how the fat slipped off of her after she ate the devil fruit, which also, I really like how, like, you can kind of tell everyone has something going on about them whenever, after they eat a devil fruit, where, like, something happens and changes in their body, not just whenever they're activating it, just, like, as a being, which, kind of ties into that whole idea of them becoming the blank human, right? Rubber human, rubber man, wax human, right? Where you see, like, Mr. 3 has this, like, very pale, almost, like, waxy look to him, and he has, like, his fingernails and other things like that. I thought it was really, really cool. So, like, there's, like, some very obvious tells, but then there's also some, like, secondary tells that is only activated whenever their fruit is used, such as, like, Buggy and other things like that. I love the subtext between the actors that they put in there, because Emily Rudd herself is a massive One Piece fan. She loves playing Nami. She knows what's going on. All of the characters and actors know what's going on, right? I mean, Inaki Godoy, right, whenever asked who was his favorite pirate, fucking dropped Rox Diza back, and that was right at the time whenever he was first showing up in the manga. So, they clearly know ball. And, I mean, McKinyu fucking plays the One Piece TTRPG with Oda, has the life-size, not life-size, that statue of Whitebeard in his house, and, the signed play mat for the TTRPG, or the TTCG, like, to play on and other stuff like that, which is so cool. So to kind of see the subtext between them, and, like, the way that they, like, give glances and, like, these knowing looks, or, like, these looks of, and, like, gestures and physicality between them, adds a lot there, where you're clearly like, okay, they know what they're doing, and then that adds character work inside of it, right? The moment with Nami and Vivi, them hugging, but also getting, like, this look to each other, really fueling the Yuri, right? Which is a very popular thing, Nami x Vivi, that whole thing, right? And then, obviously, with Tashigi and Smoker, there's, like, these looks and these glances back and forth that really shows the chemistry, and beyond the dialogue, as Herbie, Master Chief Petty Officer, which is really interesting that they dropped that full title. I don't remember when it's ever actually mentioned. And then, obviously, currently, Captain Smoker, because obviously he becomes Vice Admiral Smoker later on in the manga. And then again, we haven't seen fucking Smoker in forever, aside from that one bit in the manga, like, I don't know, almost 100 chapters ago, and then seeing a few of the things of him in, some of the color spreads. I think he's in one or two of them recently, and the cover pages, right, cover stories for, like, the reader requests. And then, obviously, Tashigi and Zoro. I like that knowing look that Zoro gives, kind of, and, like, the, like, physicality and emotions and emoting that McKinyu does to kind of tell the reason why he doesn't finish off Tashigi is because, one, he does actively mention Kuina by name when he sees her, but also the fact that he doesn't want to because she looks like Kuina and he doesn't want to hurt her. And I'm also really glad that they didn't drop the "is it because I'm a woman" line, which in the manga it makes sense, right? Like, that's a part of Tashigi's character and a part of, like, Zoro's character of even being like, no, it's not because you're a woman, right? And, setting up the fact that no, it's not. And obviously the misogyny jokes with Zoro are still prevalent to this day, but, clearly he's not. Clearly he treats all of his opponents with respect, even if he does get very fucking dirty and disrespectful with them in fights. It's kind of like a equal opportunity, equal rights, equal blades instead of fights. I guess that can still work, but whatever. I also really like the subtext with, like, Crocus, where, he's mentioning that he wants to be left alone, and that he's met people who are stubborn like him, having to deal with sick people who are stubborn and all this other stuff, and that's clearly mentioning Roger and all this other stuff. and like painting Crocus as this very melancholic man who's retired and almost kind of yearns for the days when he was with Roger, even though he was taking care of Laboon first, and then Roger came around, and then he left to become the Roger Pirate's doctor, and then was taking care of Roger when he was sick. Also, great detail of like kind of hinting at the fact that Roger was sick, and that I have a son talk between Garp and all this other stuff, which is actually going to make a lot of the anime onlys think that maybe Luffy is his son, because, Garp is his grandson, so who knows, even though we all know who his dad is, and that's my boy Dragon. He looked great. I loved his voice. I love everything about him in this. He was fucking awesome. And then that hint of Sabo in the background, where people who have never seen One Piece before was like, who the fuck is this dude? But we all know that that's Sabo. He looks fucking awesome. Even though it's not really a very clear shot of him, you see the outfit, you see the look and the hat and everything, you're like, that's Sabo. Which then will, whenever later on it's explained between the Ace, Sabo, Luffy, kind of whole dynamic between them and their family and their brotherhood, it will make that even more impactful, because now we've actually seen Sabo despite being told that he's dead, by not knowing that that's Sabo by name. I really enjoy the comedy, actually. It doesn't feel MCU, oh, that just happened, or that sort of shit, or whatever, or like kind of quippy. It feels very diegetic. There are some jokes and quips said by characters, but there's also like a lot of physical comedy too, which is where One Piece has always excelled at. And I also like the way, like I mentioned, it's recontextualized, where pre-time skip, and especially early time skip, is almost constantly a gag, right? Before chapter 200, and before, we even really get to Alabasta, right? But even, and not really until after Alabasta and after Foxy's fight, right? Do we kind of start to see stuff get taken a little bit more seriously with the characters and stuff. But the goofiness and humor is always kind of there within the characters, designs, looks, attitudes, all this other stuff. But I like the fact that it's kind of recontextualized. We're like, yes, these guys are very silly. Yes, they look fucking ridiculous. But Wapol is like, take me seriously. Why aren't you taking this seriously? And Luffy just like gives him that look. I love that. All the little details too in the background, if I want to talk about them, you can kind of see the details of like the transponder snails. You see the little details when they're on Little Garden, where like Brogy carved out a statue of Loki's silhouette that we see with Chiffon's flashback, and him with the flower. And then we even get to see like this like Nika looking statue, and then obviously he carved Dory, and then you also get you see in the background Figureland Square, which, Figureland Garling, Figureland Shanks, Figureland Shamrock, all these other people, and the Figureland family line, all this other stuff. Figureland Uta, right? Because she's a part of that. I still find that so funny that they dropped the name in a movie, and then it's not explained for like another fucking 3 years, because One Piece Film Red released in 2023, and we only get to hear about the Figurelands properly through Garland in like 2024 and then 2025 with Shanks and his brother. I really enjoy all of that stuff, like with all the posters and the propaganda and all like the advertisements and all the bounty posters. You see Pedro, you hear mentions of God Valley, you hear mentions of Nika by name, Victory Day, all this other stuff. I really, really like. I love the detailing. I love like the set dressing and designs and the world building and all those little things like the pick apart. And it all just feels like it fits, and it makes so much sense, where it's like, yeah, if Oda had like a year to draw every panel, he would stuff this much information and diegetic world building into the background. But then again, he already shoved so much fucking much into each page of the manga and all these panels and all this other stuff, right? I like the increase in destruction and action, like, as we move. Before, it was really good, right? I loved the way that a lot of the destruction looked. It felt very superhuman. It felt very powerful. But now it's even, like, increasing more and more and more. More stuff's breaking. Walls are breaking. Buildings are being threatened. Huge chunks of walls are being taken out of. And that fits for about this point in time within time skip, because... within the pre-time skip, because in the manga... Yes, there's a lot of destruction, especially like with Don Krieg on the Baratier, or the Barati, and however you want to say it. And then obviously against, in Arlong Park, against Arlong, and then Arlong Park itself being taken down with Gum Gum Axe, or Battle Axe, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. And then we see that in the anime too, not anime, the live action too. So that's really, really cool to get to see that. And I just really enjoy that we're getting to see more and more kind of special cool moves, named moves, and people doing a lot of really cool superhuman stuff. I really hope that the live action gets as bombastic as the manga does, because we're getting to a point to where there's about to be a fuck ton of destruction going on being caused by these people, right? Mr. One splitting buildings in half casually on accident, Zoro lifting up the building, and, we're about to see, the flying slashes, or the fierce slashes, or however you want to call them, right? Because that's what the name of the sword technique is. Yes, it's called 180-pound cannon from Zoro, but the actual, like, technique that swordsmen use, kind of like the EI quick draw, which is Zoro's Shishi Sansan, is called like a fierce slash, or a flying tiger, or it's also sometimes called a flying slash. So I can't wait to see that, because he uses it in Skypiea. So that'd be very cool to see. I really hope to see more of that kind of big CGI fight sort of thing going on with, like, actual actors and everything, and wire work, kind of continue the charm. The music is amazing. I love, like, the orchestral renditions of a lot of, like, the classic Toei OST. Sounds great. I also really like a lot of the character-specific lyric ones, like talking about the giants and bravery, and then Tony Chopper's song that he got, and all this other stuff. I thought it was really, really good. The makeup looks great, right? The prosthetics look great. Especially on those, like, zombie sort of, like, amalgamation beasts that weren't in the manga, but was made from, like, the munch fruit, and being made into these, like, amalgamation soldiers. I thought that looked great too. The sound design is awesome. I love how punchy it is. It really does sound like a lot of these characters are hitting with, like, supersonic speeds, dodging bullets. You hear the whip crack sound effect whenever Luffy punches somebody, and you see, like, that air displace for a second because of how fast he's moving and how strong, Sanji's kicks are. I really, really do enjoy it. And also, like, the casual flexes of their strength, Zoro lifting all these massive weights. Even if they kind of look comedic, they're not as comedic as they are in the manga, with the huge thousands of tons he's swinging around. But you can clearly tell that that's kind of like what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a lot of tonnage being lifted by Zoro, and all this other stuff, which kind of also makes it a little funny, like whenever he gets the Tetsu stuck in one of the pillars when he's fighting the 100 bounty hunters. Where it's like, come on, you can just break out of that. But they didn't, suspension of disbelief, other things like that. And also Zoro is Zoro. So the chemistry is also on point with a lot of the actors and between characters and all this other stuff. They really brought all of the Straw Hats to life with all their interactions and all of the recurring characters, and even the one-off characters that we won't see again. Unless we get, like, flashbacks, or, flash 2s of where, Dalton is talking, and Kureha, and all these other people in VV later on, because that's something that happens in the manga, is we get to see what they're up to, kind of like, in brief glimpses whenever reading the news, or seeing, like, Luffy's new bounty and other stuff like that. Or big politics are happening in the world of One Piece. It really seems like Oda, as supervisor and producer, is using this massive world that he already has over almost 30 years to make the live action feel like a new interpretation and adaptation of events, right? almost sort of like what he would have wanted to do had he all planned it out from the very beginning and all the characters and stuff, because we all know that Oda didn't plan a lot of it. He just is a master at recontextualizing stuff and using what he made and then bringing it back and having a great memory for things and being like, oh, that can play in here, right? And yes, he does foreshadow a lot. You know, Oda level foreshadowing is a thing, but also a lot of it is just that wasn't a foreshadow back then. That was just a detail, and now Oda remembers that detail that he did because of probably pure unadulterated autism or neurodivergency to be doing all this for so long. And, you know, look, he's got to have some sort of neurodivergency because he spent 4 years on Whole Cake doing the food and, musical bit, and then just completely moved on from it. He's like, yeah, okay, I'm done. 4 years was long enough. But I really do enjoy the way that it's being used. The characters that were only introduced hundreds of chapters later, especially post-time skip, now being brought into pre-time skip and kind of being recontextualized and having new uses or so on and so forth. I really do enjoy that. I also love the way that the laughs are done, like the ga ba 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 from Dorian Brogy. Their unique laughs, I really enjoy. They sound silly, but they sound natural. Like you can hear Crocodile's very baritone, and you know, Kureha's that sort of thing. I think they did that really, really well. I was kind of afraid that they wouldn't do the laughs, but so far, when they are doing the laughs, especially when their characters would be so much without them, I think that they're doing excellent with them. Again, all the cameos are great, and all the hints and all this other stuff. I can't wait to see more with what they do with it, but I do have some cons. It's disappointing that some of the stuff is missing from the manga that does a lot for like world building and character development and, you know, chemistry. And it kind of feels like some of it is missing just for the sake of being live action and feeling believable, despite the fact of all the other goofy shit that's going on, right? Like, you don't... Yes, the flag moment happens with Luffy, but he's not, like, actually holding up the flag up on the peak of the mountain and other stuff like that. But they don't have that, but they do have, you know, Luffy clawing and his hands bleeding from 5 hours of climbing, which it's not actually said, I don't think, if it's 5 hours or not. I don't remember seeing a subtitle for it while I was watching it. Or, you know, him carrying Sanji with his teeth. Now Sanji's also with him, despite the fact before, I forget exactly what it is in Drum Island, of why Luffy is carrying Sanji with his teeth, but there is the cool moment where he catches him and throws him up with his head. No Crocus, one of us will die when the Straw Hats meet him, which is such a funny bit. That's so funny. Where it's like, one of us will die, and all of them get like really serious, and he goes, yeah, who's that? Me. No Luffy versus Zoro, which is really disappointing in Whiskey Peak, you know, that misunderstanding, but it kind of like also fits where, you know, the trust of Luffy and his crew and all this other stuff, but we don't get fucking McKinyu, kind of like Berserk's actor in the 4Kids dub of One Piece, screaming, Luffy! So that's always cool. Missing scenes from the manga and some of the arcs, like Luffy being stuck under the mountain or the giant skull in Little Garden. Missing the bar scene from Logtown, where, you know, we get another reference being like, oh wow, he's just like Gold Roger, which is kind of replaced with the fact that everyone's kind of like mentioning Gold Roger and be like, wow, he's just like Gold Roger. And some people might think it's repetitive, but that happens equally enough in the manga and the anime, especially around this time. People are like, that's Gold Roger, and it's brought up a little bit further down the line too, you know, and want to be like, how high will your ceiling go, and all this other stuff, and people seeing Roger and Luffy, and the way that he smiles in the face of death, laughing at the face of death, and all this other stuff. The Will of D, all that other stuff, which I'm glad they didn't remove. I'm glad they didn't remove the cherry blossoms either. So that was really fun. Some of the dialogue can feel pretty, like, pushed by them, which I think is the term in acting, where, you know, you're pushing a line, or, oh, that's getting a little pushed, where it kind of feels like they're just forcing it out a little bit. Also, some of the stuff does feel a little bit rushed. I was hoping that the moment between Smoker and Dragon was a little bit longer, but it's not. It's actually pretty quick and snappy, which feels good. And oh my god, I just gotta mention the moment where Dragon disappears and Smoker is gone because the wind that was summoned by whatever it is. And it definitely seems like it is pointing to, now in the live action, that it is Dragon is the one doing it, which, you know, in hindsight, even though we still don't know in the manga of what it is pretty obvious that it is Dragon. I also love the moment of just fucking pure speed from Smoker where, you know, Luffy's about to get up and you blink and you'll miss it, and fucking Smoker zips across and slams him down into the ground just before he pulls out his Jeet, and, you know, then Dragon stops him, right? That was so cool. I want to see more speed like that. I want to see these characters zipping around and all this other stuff. And technically, if you want to be as technical as possible, it isn't really showing up until Water 7, where, you know, Soru is introduced with CP9 and Gear 2nd. But there are a lot of moments where, like, you know, Luffy and other fighters, like, disappear and then, like, reappear and, like, attack somebody. And other things like that. Very much blur of speed sort of things going on. I remember that it actually happens with in Skypiea. And I know Enel did it with his Logia, where he like kind of appears and puts his foot on with his toe rings on Zoro's head. But also in that same moment where he's fighting Enel, and just before the lightning blasts, Luffy like blurs out of the way and it like zips past him and all this other stuff. Very, very cool. Which, I mean, there is also the interpretation that he just like completely dodged it with raw speed, but, you know, it's one of those things where power scaling's weird within One Piece. Sometimes it just happens, and other things that it just, you know. Or like in the moment with against Bartholomew Kuma in Thriller Bark, where he uses the laser and Zoro begins to move and he blurs out of the way, but the laser is too fast and blows him away, and all that sorts of other cool stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, some of the awkward and delivery lines does feel a little bit awkward here and there. I know some people don't enjoy McKinney's Zoro, and how Zoro is kind of already... Jesus Christ, that was a... I thought somebody dropped something for a second. It's a now, guys. It's a now. Foreshadowing. Oda Leto foreshadowing over here, guys. And he almost is like too stoic now, but I actually really like it. It feels very in character. I love the way that he talks and the way that he acts. And he does smile and laugh a lot, even when he's not being controlled by Miss All Sunday. So, very, very cool. The other big con that I actually do have is... well, there's one here, but this isn't actually like a really major con here. I just want to get this out of the way first. The actors look great, right? But some of them feel weird. Like, some of them could have used a little bit more work, or a little bit more, like, touch up on their costumes and other things. I love Tashigi and Alvida's actresses, but I think that they could have used a bit better costuming. Like, the glasses on Tashigi just don't look right. And I know that they're not supposed to. She's supposed to be very much like a four eyes, thick as shit, like, glasses. But the glasses themselves just look very cheap, and I wish it was kind of done a little bit better, unless kind of them being all bent up, almost like they're curved and kind of weirdly sitting on her face, is supposed to show the fact that she's never really wearing them, always on her head, right? Or you know, she bumped into Zoro and they kind of got banged up. But I don't know. I just feel like, you know, Alvida could have... like, the corset she's wearing is actually, like, really nice, and I wish that we actually got to see a little bit more of it, but it almost feels like the coat that she's wearing, instead of being, like tied around her, it's kind of just, like, freely flowing, and it I don't know, it just doesn't really look right to me. The shape of the silhouette is just a little too flat and straight to me. Let's see, what else? Oh, right. One of the biggest gripes that I still have with the live action is I wish the characters were tall. right? There's this moment where you see Tashigi's actress, right? And she looks short as shit. I have no idea how tall she actually is, but unless she's actually one of the non-binary actors that got hired. I don't know. Pardon me if so. I don't know. All I know is that Kobe's actor is non-binary. Fucking twink that they are. God, Kobe's actor is so hot, dude. Oh my lord. I want to rail that twink into oblivion. But I do want... You see this moment, like, with Tashigi and Smoker, where she's, like, standing on these stairs, and, like, he is finally eye level with her. And I wish that we made... Even, like, if it was just, like, inserts, or maybe, like, just a little bit, like, camera trickery. Like, we did it almost 30 years ago with... Lord of the Rings, with, like, the Hobbits and all this other stuff in perspective. Fucking pull an elf and do some, like, weird camera work to make these characters look taller. Because, like, that's one of the biggest parts of a lot of these One Piece villains is how big they are. They are monumental in size. Crocodile is 8 feet 8 inches, if I'm correct. And, Joe Manganiello he looks great. I love the way that he looks as Sir Crocodile. Everything about him, his acting, he's amazing in it, right? And he's a One Piece fan too, so he's putting his fucking foot into this role. But I just wish some of the characters that are meant to be tall were a little bit taller. Like, give Garp's actor maybe some inserts or platforms or something. And same thing with Roger. Like, Roger's supposed to be 8 feet tall, dude. And same with Garp and the Admirals. I don't want to see Kizaru be just like a guy who's maybe 6'4". He's supposed to be 7 feet tall. At least make him a little bit more taller than the rest, to where he will, like, kind of tower over the rest of the others. And I think they might be trying to do that with Brook, because Brook's actor always kind of seems pretty tall in comparison to other people, but not like humongous, like 10 feet tall, fucking Home Depot 13-foot tall skeleton lawn ornament, right? It is one of those things where I'm like, man, this character's supposed to be super tall and he's not, and that is really disappointing. Like, they got the physiques right, they got the looks right, and they got, everything's so right, but, like, there's this little tiny detail about the physicality that I wish was still there that made everything so much more impactful. Like, Hybrid Chopper in his, like, man-beast form, right, is only, like, a head taller than Sanji, but, Hybrid Chopper is supposed to be really fucking ridiculously tall. He's supposed to be, like, almost 7 feet tall or something along those lines, right? And then Monster Point's even larger than that, which I'm sure they will CGI Monster Point and make him really, really big, but yeah, that's what I have to say about that. That's one of my biggest cons that I have. Overall, I really enjoyed this season of the live action, and want to see what else has changed, established, reworked, rearranged, and all this other stuff. Especially how now that characters are here, and they weren't there in canon, and now they're kind of like serving more of a purpose. They kind of now even adds more depth to them retroactively, even in the manga. If we're like, oh well, yeah, Bartolomeo was in Logtown. We know that because the manga said so, but now we're seeing, like, what that would actually look like, even if it is different, right? And also seeing Kobe and Helmeppo and all this other stuff, and, mentions and backstory and lore happening before we even hear or even see any of it, and other things along those lines. I hope to see more world building with all the established manga pieces that will be coming, hopefully, in future seasons. I'm curious about where the next season's going to end, right? Because this season's subtitled Into the Grand Line, and it wasn't like a movie. I mean, they did show like 1 or 2 of the episodes back to back in the movie theaters, and I wish I got that fucking Straw Hat popcorn bucket, but man, makes me wonder, where did they start that whole popcorn bucket thing? I feel like it kind of started with, the Dune fleshlight. But I feel like it kind of even started a little bit before that. But it's a really recent thing with the whole, like, fad of that. Anyway, if I wanted to be very critical I'd say a solid 6 out of 10 if I want to be harsh and artistically inclined and all this other stuff. I'm like, oh, writing and character and narrative and all this other stuff and like acting and, you know, camera work and all this other stuff. Like, oh, cinematography could have been better, even though the cinematography was really, really good. The way that the CGI environments looked was very fucking great. But if I wanted to be like honest and what it tries to set up and what it accomplishes on what it wanted to set up and how well it accomplishes, I'd say solid 8 out of 10, especially from, you know, like a non-One Piece fan perspective of like looking at this as a show on its own and everything that it's doing. I think solid 8 out of 10. But as a One Piece fan, and all of this counted for above, you know, the artistically inclined, what it does, how it sets up, how it actually pulls it off, because that's how I always think of things, is like, is it accomplishing what it sets up? Because like a 10 out of 10 movie could be actually 6 out of 10 compared to others, but that 10 out of 10 is because it executed what it does so well, even if itself isn't really that great, could still be a 10 out of 10. But as a One Piece fan and all of that I just said, solid 10 out of 10. I loved Season 2. It was great. I'll probably rewatch it again, just like I did with Season 1, and periodically go back and just kind of eat up all the details and all the other stuff, and be re-listening to that We Are orchestral, or the very, very strongest orchestral rendition, or King of the Pirates rendition, that awesome orchestra. Sounds so fucking good. Next season, I hope there's more wokeness, because that pissed a lot of people off with all the wokeness and everything like that, despite the fact that a lot of these actors are handpicked by Oda himself. So I just want to see more people mauled and fume and all this other shit. I want them to keep getting rage baited by this fucking show. Like, it isn't One Piece, one of the most political fucking radical mangas out there, even if it's not very in your face about it. It is in your face about it, but it's not like in words, it's in action. Oda has said he has a plan for where the live action is going to end, and I'm curious of actually where that's going to be. I wonder if he's maybe going to go about it kind of like what his initial plan was, like the Warlord saga, and then have it end with the Warlords, instead of, you know, expanding into like the Yonko and Emperor saga and all this other stuff. And maybe it'll even be like a major timeline diversion from the manga. Or hell, maybe it'll end like with the Skypiea, where they never got the Skypiea in 4 Kids, and the last episode is just the ship falling on them, and it cuts to black. Also, I love the little references. One of the really funny ones that I noticed was Zoro going, "So it's a girl whale," at Nami explaining the uvula, which is a direct call to the movie Monster House, where he's like, "That's the uvula," and he goes, "It's a girl house." Fucking hilarious, dude. That actually made me pause and just laugh for like a minute straight. That was so funny. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like down below, and go watch One Piece live action season 2. If you want to support me, I have Patreon. I have memberships. I have a tip jar for Streamlabs, and you know, that PayPal shit, and that means you can also go do media share and other things along those lines. There's also super chats and thanks, and you know, support creator and all this other stuff that's already there, and all sorts of other things. It really does help. I want to get a new camera. I want to, you know, up the quality of other things along with everything. Maybe get a new mic that sounds better than this Blue Yeti that I've had for nearly 10 years now, and other things along those lines. But also get money so that I can help, you know, maybe donate to certain things or do other things along those lines, and you know, do as much good as I can in the world, spreading you know, revolution and all this other stuff, being a pirate, all this other stuff, because the communism thing isn't a joke. You know, I want to, you know, put the will back in the hands of the people, educate people, and give them community, build a community, do stuff with that community, and actually make meaningful material changes. So, yes, thank you, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye-bye. Thank you to the ultimate members of the fleet, aka the members and patrons: Saline, Peachy Bun, Sleepy Sheepy, Lola Barzal, Finch R, Eminali, Belle, Lily McMillan, Henri, Shira, Angel313, Andrew Ortega, Ariana Henry, Yoan, Test, Helen, Miles Morales, Booglarka Boggy, Another Dragon, Moons AW, On You, Lind the Vocaloid Nerd ARG, Distar, Leah, Yui Izumi, AT, Chocobo/Chris, Annie, Sheng Guang, Number 1 Ash Bradley fan, Michaela Malone, Gondala, Haruka Sakurai, It's Hope, Mealy, Sen Amon Klein, CEO, Ori, Questionable Decisions, Indami Sochiro, Shali, Purest Failure, Shelly, Joe, Fuda Kajiyama, Nami WP, Kaku, Gukan, Mano, Cerulean, Brixie, Undying Flames, Nail, Rookie Go Boom, Pregnant Valentino, Hey, Makoto Kayano, Luca, Lunar Eclipse, Valis, Tavita, Anna Beatrice, Lolikasi Kos, Ariana Scronigs, Zaraya Yavuz, Lilith Katrayan, Hana Jawan Koska, Mary Rosales, Sai Vav, Game Roblox, Catherine Stacy, Mary, Uwu Owo Gur, Levi's Wife, Leached Mocha, Turkey Wacky, Gloomerai, and Ren. And now, for the paid tiers, starting with Fresh Pirates, Yui Izumi, Shelly, Angel313, Haruka Sakurai, Mealy, Lintel, and Flowers. And now for the crewmates, Saline, Makoto Kayano, and Shelly. And finally, an enormous declaration of veneration to the highest paid member, Shelly. If you wish to support me, you can do so through the links in the description down below. You can become a member on YouTube for 99 cents, or as high as $100, or on the Patreon for as low as $1.50 through the annual subscriptions. You will get your name listed here in colors and on the special splash pages, and also in the beginning and end and read out at the end and beginning of every single video. Thank you.